Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone is in from the Dorothy. I'm Lori Cartier, your worship associate this morning, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. Hi, everybody on Zoom. I didn't look to see how many of you there are, but I'm sure there's a few of you on Zoom. And anyway, we welcome you all here in the sanctuary and on Zoom. If anybody is visiting us for the first time, we especially welcome you. And I'm happy to say that after the service, there will be a fellowship hour, and you are all welcome to stay for a cup of coffee, a little visit, and a treat or two. So any of you who might be new, if you have questions about our congregation, look for someone with a name badge on, and you can probably ask them if they have a rainbow flag on it. I don't see anybody with that. But if you got a rainbow flag, Kathy will answer any of your questions. I don't see anybody new, but that doesn't mean you're not there. So as you have probably heard already, Reverend Drew's father did pass away this week. And so he is still in Detroit, taking time to grieve with his family. So we are sending him all our love and our thoughts and caring that this won't, he'll be back with us in a week or so. So to help us out today, we're very pleased to have Reverend Charles Stevens with us. Reverend Stevens is Minister Emeritus of the UU congregation in Washington Crossing in Titusville, New Jersey, and also of the UU congregation of Ellsworth, and I think many of you know him already. He and Allison, his wife, retired to Blue Hill, Maine in 2012. So we welcome you, Reverend Stevens. Thank you so much. So Penobscot County is technically in the yellow today, and we are recommending but not requiring masks. The worship leaders will not be wearing masks, but we'll be sure we have some distance from everyone. And you are allowed to sing, but we do recommend that you sing with a mask. And like I said, we are going to have fellowship hour, so we just ask you all to use your personal judgment about anything you participate in. We know that everyone will do their very best to take care of themselves. It's getting complicated. So now, as always, there are a few announcements. So we're happy to announce that the yard sale was wonderfully successful. We made over $1,800. So, woo! I don't see Kate or Betsy here, but those two women spent the whole week setting up pricing, getting everything together. They absolutely made the yard sale a huge success. Even things that arrived dirty, they washed them to make sure they were saleable. So we just have huge thanks. I don't know where you guys are, but we thank you so much. And now it's time for our next fundraiser, which is our wonderful What Can You Imagine raffle. So ticket sales will start on November the 13th, so be ready to get out there and sell lots of tickets. Is Sue there? I don't see you, Sue. Are you going to have them for people to pick up in the Dorothy that day on the 13th? So you can pick up. So start selling them ahead, so you'll be that much further along. Then we have the holiday gift basket auction, which will take place on December 10th. And if you're part of a UUSB small group, or if you just want to make a basket yourself, see Kathy and get those baskets in. So yes. Oh, the wreaths, absolutely. Be prepared for the wreaths, but that's going to be the weekend before, right? That's on the 3rd. Okay, so on the 3rd, we will be having the wreaths, so plan on coming and decorating your wreath and purchasing it when you do it. So today, Spirit of Drumming will be raising the roof after church with some drumming. And the Social Justice Committee is gathering at the Kellys this afternoon. I think it's at 1 o'clock for a postcard party to send out the vote messages to voters in North Carolina. So if you're interested in doing that, who's going to that? Are you going, Patty? See Patty or Lee, and they'll tell you more so you can be sure that you can join them. And next week we'll be honoring Samhain or Halloween with a ritual honoring those ancestors who held a special meaning in our lives. So please bring a picture or a memento token of something that reminds you of your ancestor or ancestors, and we'll be doing a ritual around that, and you'll get me back for that. So this has been my month to be up here. So anyway, you can see more if you picked up an order of service in the front, there's more announcements there, and there's more in the e-news. So Reverend Stevens suggested we might want to do this, and I'm going to do this. So sit back and relax. Take a deep breath. Breathe in, breathe out. And I have some opening words from Lao Tzu. Those who would take over the earth and shape it to their will never, I notice, succeed. The earth is like a vessel so sacred that at the mere approach of the profane, it is marred. And when they reach out their fingers, it is gone. For a time in the world, some force themselves ahead, and some are left behind. And for a time in the world, some make a great noise, and some are held silent. And for a time in the world, some are puffed fat, and some are kept hungry. And for a time in the world, some push aboard, and some are tipped out. At no time in the world will a man who is sane overreach himself, overspend himself, overrate himself. And now our introit, which is a recorded video from Molly. Blessed be. As always, thank you, Molly, so much for taking the time to put those great videos together. So, our chalice this morning will be lit by Linda Kaler. You can put those words up on the screen, Atticus. You don't need me. You can just do the screen. So if you would join me for the chalice lighting that's on your screen. O flaming chalice, symbol of a free faith, burn with the holy oil of helpfulness and service. Spread warmth and light and hope. Warm hearts grown cold with indifference, light dark places with justice. Rekindle hope in despair. May we bring fuel for thy fire of love. May the oil of loving kindness flow from us to thy leaping flame. And may hands of service shelter thee, that no winds of hate may extinguish thy brightness. May thy light and warmth be eternal. May we be keepers of thy flame. Blessed be. So our opening hymn this morning is hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life. Again, this is recorded, but you are welcome to stand and sing behind your mask and enjoy participating. Go ahead, Attica.
For all that is our life, we sing all thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build a common good and make our own days glad.
So now is the time for all ages, and we are going to invite all those who are young and young at heart to come down and sit on your newly revitalized rug. Come on down. Reverend Stevens is going to, maybe Sue can move the chair. Thank you. So Reverend Stevens is going to do our story this morning, which is an ancient Turkish story about Nasr-Eddin Hoxha.
It's a pleasure to be here again. I'm glad that I was able to respond when Drew emailed us. He emailed Mark Worth and me and asked if one of us could do it. And I had twisted Mark's arm very hard so that he would run for State House for Ellsworth, because we had an opponent that was kind of scary, is kind of scary. Anyhow, so Mark is very busy running for State House, and so I was more than thrilled to come. Good to be with all of you, and I have a story about, a Turkish story about Nasr-Eddin Hoxha. And he was kind of an honored man in his community, and whenever the governor was away and some legal case came up, Hoxha would come in and sit and listen to it and make decisions. So this day, there was a very wealthy innkeeper who brought a suit against a poor student. And so Hoxha said, listen to me. He says, well, what's this about? And the innkeeper says, well, this student was stealing from me. And he says, well, what did he steal? Well, he would hang around the kitchen area outside of the inn, and he would steal all the wonderful aromas of the food that I was cooking. And he wouldn't pay for anything. I slaved and I worked for this food and to cook it, and he stole that aroma. Now you can all imagine when your mother or father are cooking something that you really love. Those smells are pretty good. And so Hoxha said to the poor student, he says, is this true? The student says, well, yes, I'm a poor student. I barely am able to buy my books and pay my rent, and I beg for a few scraps, and I eat whatever I can, and it smells so good outside that inn that I often come there and I smell all the wonderful flavors coming out. So Hoxha thought for a while, and he says, well, to the student, do you have any money? The student says, well, I've got 3 coppers, sort of like 3 pennies. He says, well, give them to me. The innkeeper felt pretty good because he figured this is promising. So so Hoxha held the pennies, He says, now to the innkeeper, close your eyes. The innkeeper figured that's kind of strange, but the Hoja said it, so he closed his eyes and he said, now can you hear the coins of the student? The innkeeper says, yeah, I can hear them. He says, well, the sounds that you hear of these coins pay for the smell of the food the student stole from you.
That is stupid. I knew it was a scam. I knew it was
You knew that was coming, didn't you?
Yes, I knew it was going to be a scam.
So the Hoja was a wise man, and he realized that the student did take something, but it was something that he should have. And it's kind of like us when we're with one another. If somebody is suffering or somebody's hurting, we try to reach out and help them. Sometimes we get selfish. Sometimes we're a little bit self-centered. And yep, all of us are. But this story brings us back home to what really counts and what really is important, that we're part of a community. And you're part of this wonderful community congregation here. And now they're going to sing you off to your Sunday school class. And thank you for coming up here, and I'm grateful that it was a day that I think were yellow so that you could come up here and not a red so that you would have to stay further away. It's good to be with you, and it's good to see you, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
So nice to see the kids. Of course, as usual, more than half of the people in the sanctuary have left the room, but I do want to let you know that we have 18 boxes on Zoom, which frequently means that we have closer to 28, 20, 30 people, because there's a lot of times that there's 2 people in a box, so, or more. So, hi Zoomers, we're so happy you're here with us. Okay, now I invite Reverend Stevens to come forward and give us a pastoral prayer.
For all those joys and concerns that were shared, including and especially this morning, Reverend Drew. But the joys of shingles relieving, it's literally a pain. I remember that of my father's. Of employment during an uncertain time. Relief over children getting needed treatment, getting needed help. For the joy of new life in families, grandchildren. For friends and past members who are still in our hearts and minds. For those silent joys and sorrows that each one of us has in our hearts and our minds today and throughout our days. We give thanks for this community, the people here, whether you're physically here or here through Zoom. We give thanks for a community that reaches out and holds us. And I'd like to share a special prayer poem with you written by Richard Fuchs, a good friend of mine, who we were in the Greenfield group together. He had to quit when his wife had Alzheimer's and needed him at home. I quit when my children were young and needed me at home more often than I was off with a group of ministers. He wrote this that's close to my heart. We lift up our hearts in thanks for the sun and the dawn, which we did not create, for the moon and the evening, which we did not make, for food, which we plant but cannot grow, for friends and loved ones we have not earned and cannot buy, for this gathered company, which welcomes us as we are, from wherever we have come, and for all our free churches that keep us human and encourage us in our quest for beauty, for truth, and for love, for all things which come to us as gifts, gifts of being from sources beyond ourselves, gifts of life and love and friendship. We lift up our hearts and we give thanks this day. May it be so.
Thank you, Jack. So now is the time in our service when we will take time to share our abundance by passing the plate for our offertory. So half of the undesignated money this month will be shared with Partners for Peace. And for those of you online, you can take a moment to make your donation via the website or send in a check. And we thank you all for your generosity. Thank you all for your generosity. Blessed be. And now Reverend Stevens and I guess I don't need this. Reverend Stevens and I are going to change places, and he's going to come up here and do the rest of the service with his wonderful thoughts on how can I help. Blessed be.
Was there special music too? These are kind of tricky, especially with the earpiece. It is great to be here. I was enjoying sitting down amongst you and enjoying the stained glass windows. I always like that whenever I'm here because they're so beautiful, and when the sun is out like it is today, it is especially nice. The special music at this time? Okay. I've got, well, why don't I do the reading first and we'll have a pause in between of music. This is a poem by Naomi Shihab Nye. A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south, because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him. No car drive too near his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say, fragile, handle with care. His ear fills up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we are not willing to do what he is doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. Let us remember.
So come out. You have been waiting long enough. You're done with all the talk, with nothing on the table. It's time to come on out. There will be no sign from above. You'll only hear the knock of your own heart, a signal. If you are afraid, come out. If you are awake, come out and level up. Begin again, dynamite the dam on the flow. Your body feels the talk, time as it hammers. Lord, we are cinders from a fire burning long ago. But here it is, the knock of your own heart that matters. If you are afraid, come forth. If you are alone, come forth now. Everybody here has loved and lost. So love again. Call it any name you need. Call it your 2.0, your rebirth, whatever. So long as you can feel it all. So long as all your doors are flung wide. Call it your day number 1 and the rest of it forever. If you're afraid, give more. If you're alive, give more now. Everybody here has seams and scars. So what? Let your faith die. Bring your wonder. Yes, you are only one. No, it is not enough. But if you lift your eyes, I am your brother. And this is all we need. And this is where we start. This is the day we
Holly, for the visuals. They're also fantastic visuals if you go on YouTube and look up leveling up on there, and it's equally powerful in different ways. I invite you to think of your top 2 or 3 values. What are the values which you find most important? Don't take too long to think about it. The first ones that pop up. We Unitarian Universalists are drawn more toward the ethical values and teachings of Jesus and other religious leaders than we are to any theological beliefs about those leaders. We like the saying that deeds, not creeds, are what are important to us. One of our hymns that we sang says, "Life is a gift that we are called to use, to build the common good and thus make our days glad." Now, in the poem by Naomi Shihab Nye, a person crosses the street in the rain, the falling rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south, because there's a child asleep on their shoulder. The person is concerned for the child's comfort, but also for the safety of their child. Now, we all know what that's like. Carrying an infant against our chest makes us sense that we are responsible for a precious and fragile life, a being. Now, whether we're a parent, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, a concerned friend, we know what a feeling of responsibility is like for that child. The joy that was raised for a child facing hyperactivity or anything, we feel those pulls. My children are now 46, 39, and 34, and still I'm concerned about their safety, their well-being, their employment, both emotionally and physically. Okay, shift gears. Now imagine you just won $100,000. Make it $1 million. And as long as we're imagining, make it tax-free. What are you going to do with that money? Again, don't take too long to think about it. Just identify in your mind what you would do with that money or some of that money. Now, when comparing the 2 scenarios, how would you spend that sudden influx of unexpected money with what we identify as our highest values? When comparing the 2, if you're like me, you find some varying amounts of divergence. Our values might be world peace, eliminating poverty, ending gun violence. But then what would we imagine doing with that unexpected gift of money? It might be a vacation that we've dreamed of, adding a room to our house or getting that new car or boat or whatever it might be. The imaginary scenario is one thing, but we face similar conflicts when faced with many real-life requests for help. We all have internal resistance built up over our lifetimes. We may wonder in the face of some situations calling for help, will we end up enabling that person to remain stuck in their problem? We may worry about how much time and resources we have to extend. After all, there are so many people and so many needs. Who should I help? And where do I draw the line? We have realistic doubts and needs that contribute to the resistance we have for helping others. And yet we do have our stated values. We know that they are only truly valued by us if they influence our behavior. Don't get me wrong, I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone. I know full well that I fall into the same patterns. I quickly agreed to step in to fill in for Drew today, but I know and I respect this congregation. I know and I respect Drew's ministry. Yet would I do the same for a non-UU minister? Would I do the same for a UU minister that I don't know as well or is more distant? This is a small personal illustration. I remember the time, months ago, that Allison and I were staying in a motel, and I rushed out to get something from the car. It was my third or fourth trip back and forth. It was a hot day. I was tired. I was in a hurry. I went through the door and I didn't pay attention to the woman about to come in after me. I walked in and let the door close. The woman, very sarcastically, opened the door, came in and said, "Thank you," and walked through. I made all sorts of justifications to myself. She was about my age. She didn't look too frail. But then I wondered, did she have a bad back? Did she have a sore shoulder? Was there something else? I don't know. But till this day, I remember that experience. Months and months later, I still remember how I felt. It's a common courtesy. My values said one thing, and I did something else. I wasn't hospitable. Now, okay, that may seem like a minor example, but I have plenty of things that I'm not willing to share. From not giving to someone in the street when I could have, not giving to good organizations, asking for donations so they can continue doing the things that I say that I value. Now, it's an infant. Think of that newborn infant, a month old, a grandchild. We're not able to distinguish between self and other. As an infant, we experience a time of unity with the universe, even though that universe is pretty small, largely our parents and us. Slowly, an infant realizes, or we realize, that if we bite our finger, we'll feel pain. If we bite a parent's finger, we don't feel so much pain. Eventually, a child will develop such a strong sense of me that we as parents realize that we need to teach that child that it really is not all about them. Adults are pleased, aren't we, when we see children share with one another. Most all religious groups teach the importance of sharing, of giving, and working together. I love the story about a mother who was preparing pancakes for her two sons, Kevin, age 5, and Ryan, age 3. The boys began to argue over who would get the first pancake. Pancake wasn't a big platter, it was a small one. The mother saw an opportunity for a moral lesson. And she said, "Now, if Jesus were sitting here, he would say, 'Let my brother have the first pancake. I can wait.'" Kevin, just as quick as that, turned to his little brother and said, "Ryan, you be Jesus." Funny, and if we're honest, most of us admit that we have resistance at times to sharing what we have with others. Actually, I think that the past several years of isolation has caused by the COVID pandemic has significantly increased our feelings of separateness, of distance. These masks that do so much good, but we resist wearing them at times. But it also separates us from people. We can't get as close. We don't recognize. We don't embrace. We don't reach out beyond our own borders as easily. And yet at the very same time, when we see a friend in grief or ill, we want to know, how can we help? My sermon title comes from a book by Ram Dass and Paul Gorman, which posits that there are times when we instinctively reach out to help. It simply happens. We reach out without even thinking. Caring can be a reflex action. Someone slips and we reach out to catch them. A car's in the ditch and we join in helping to push them out. A colleague needs help and we help. Someone is sad and we try to cheer them up. When this happens, we feel good inside because our values and our actions are in sync. There's no question. We feel a sense of kinship. This year, in spite of the pandemic, or maybe especially after the pandemic, we've felt a jolt of personal and global tragedies that have broken through our meism. The hurricane in Florida, the floods around the world, contrasted at the same time with fires and drought in other parts of the world. On some level, we realize that things like that could happen here, could happen to us, could happen to people we know. Maybe they did happen to people we know. And of course, there's the pain we feel for the people of Ukraine, valiantly fighting for their country, for their democracy. Albert Einstein wrote that a human being is part of the whole called the universe, a part limited in time and space. He went on to talk about our feelings of separateness being a kind of delusion of our own consciousness, which he said becomes a locked prison where we lose the capacity to be intimate. We lose the capacity to be compassionate and to know ourselves in a larger sense, as part of the human family, as part of the universe. Jesus and other great religious leaders taught that we do unto the least of these, our brothers and sisters, in need as we do to ourselves. The secret to avoid compassion fatigue, which all of us feel at times, is to listen to our hearts. The heart knows that we are interconnected. The heart can feel another's pain. The heart, our spirit, our emotions, can have an inherent generosity that knows no bounds. It's our brains that too often are governed by fear that set limits to generosity and tells us to avert our eyes and our minds to suffering. We need to listen to our hearts more and judge the other less. We can be present in the universe to all sentient beings. We can strive to keep our hearts and our eyes open in the face of suffering. If we do that, compassion will be ever more automatic in our response. We help more by sensing and appreciating that we are all part and parcel of the same universe, regardless of our differences, our races, our gender orientation, all of those things that seem so important to some. Our Universalist ancestors stressed that we are all part of one universal family. Our Unitarian ancestors stressed that there is a basic unity to all that exists. The secret of avoiding compassion fatigue is remembering that we are part of the interdependent web of all existence. On the deepest level, what we do for others, we do for ourselves. Amen.
Life is the greatest gift of all the riches on this earth. Life and its creatures, great and small, of high and lowly birth. So treasure it and measure it with deeds of shining worth. Mind is the brightest gift of all, its thought no barrier mars. It seeks creation's hidden plan, its quest surmounts all bars. It rains the wind, it shapes the storm, it weighs the outmost stars. We are of life, its shining gift, the measure of all things. Up from the dust our temples lift, our vision soars on wings. For seed and root, for flower and fruit, our grateful spirit sings.
As the chalice is extinguished, listen to these words. Perhaps it is good to have a beautiful mind, but an even greater gift is to have a beautiful heart, says Nobel laureate John Nash, author of A Beautiful Mind. A beautiful heart, he continues, is that gift that leads us into the beauty of living an abundant life. May it be so.